Have you ever noticed how we actually treat stress in the modern world?
Oh, it's completely backward. I mean, we just ignore it until it breaks us.
Right. I was thinking about this the other day, and I realized we approach it in just the most absurd way possible. Like, picture this scenario for a second.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
You are trapped inside a house, and this house is currently on fire. And we are not talking about, a little grease fire in the kitchen.
We're talking a full blaze.
Exactly. The flames are actively licking the walls of the living room. The smoke is getting incredibly thick, making it super hard to breathe. And the smoke alarms are just blaring so loudly you can barely even hear your own thoughts.
Sounds terrifying. So you're in full panic mode.
Total full-blown panic mode. You're frantically looking for a way out, or like a way to put the fire out. And then right in the middle of all this sheer chaos, someone just calmly strolls up to you through the smoke.
Just casually walking through the flames.
Yeah, they pull up a chair, they sit down, open this massive, dusty academic textbook, and they just start enthusiastically reading to you about the fascinating chemical properties of water.
Oh, wow.
They're going on and on about hydrogen bonds and surface tension.
Like, they are sitting there expecting you to be completely mesmerized by the molecular science of H2O while the drywall above your head is literally caving in.
Yes, you're standing there, you're coughing on the smoke, eyes
Mhm.
watering, and your only coherent thought is, I don't care about the molecular structure of water right now.
Right, like, save the science lesson.
Exactly. I don't care about the periodic table, and I definitely do not care about the history of hydrology. I just want to know if you have a hose.
It's such a perfect analogy because it really captures that ultimate disconnect between, abstract theory and immediate, desperate reality.
Yeah, that gap between knowing something and actually surviving something.
Exactly. When a person is in pure survival mode, which, let's be honest, is where a lot of us spend our days, abstract information isn't just unhelpful, it actually becomes actively deeply frustrating.
Because it feels like a distraction.
Right. The brain just categorizes it as an obstacle to survival. You're giving me trivia when I need a tool.
And that exact disconnect, that profound feeling of frustration, is really what we're unpacking today. So welcome to this deep dive.
It's a really vital topic, I think.
It really is, because if you're listening to this right now, chances are you are busy. You've got looming deadlines, you have complex relational pressures, you're probably juggling financial responsibilities.
And you've definitely been told 1,000 times by, well-meaning friends or internet articles that you just need to find a way to manage all that stress.
Oh, all the time. Just relax.
Okay.
So the core question for today's deep dive is incredibly direct, and it is aimed right at you. Why should a busy, stressed out person actually bother meditating?
People usually answer that question with a barrage of spiritual platitudes. They talk about inner peace or like cosmic alignment.
But we are taking a completely different route today. We are steering way clear of the platitudes.
Good, because those don't really help when you're in the burning house.
Exactly. Our source material for this exploration is a transcript from a highly pragmatic video by a man named Osman. He is an entrepreneur, an energy healer, a yoga and meditation teacher, and he is also known as the blind Muslim yogi.
And it's worth pointing out his perspective here is really unique, right?
Yeah, it really is. And one really important context piece about Osman, he's actually only been permanently blind since May 2023.
Ah, okay, so fairly recently.
Right, so if you check out his videos and hear him using very vivid visual descriptions of things, that's why. He had eyesight as a normal person for the vast majority of his life before 2023. So his analogies are very grounded in the visual world.
That makes a lot of sense, and it grounds his work too.
It does. And our mission today isn't to wander through abstract spiritual concepts. We aren't here to talk about mystical realms or, trying to achieve some unattainable state of perpetual bliss on a mountaintop.
Which is a relief, honestly.
Yeah. Instead, we're going to dig into Osman's incredibly grounded, strictly results-based argument for meditation. He approaches the entire practice as a ruthless tool for efficiency.
That total refusal to rely on the typical, woo-woo rhetoric is what makes this source so refreshing.
It's super practical.
He is speaking directly to the regular person who is just navigating a chaotic life. He treats meditation as a highly practical, almost utilitarian mechanism for surviving and thriving in the modern world.
He isn't asking you to pretend the world isn't stressful. He is fully acknowledging the harsh reality of the daily grind.
Right. He knows you have bills. He knows you have deadlines.
And he starts off by throwing this massive paradox right in our faces. He points out the absolute mountain of scientific data backing meditation And it's staggering when you look at it.
Oh, it really is. It's undeniable at this point.
He mentions there are over 50,000 experiments out there, citing more than 100 distinct measurable benefits.
50,000. Think about that volume of research.
It's crazy. We're talking about things like increased baseline energy, significantly better focus, lowered blood pressure, and heavily reduced cortisol levels. The sheer volume of empirical data is just overwhelming.
Any rational person looking at that raw data in a vacuum would just conclude that adopting the practice is the most obvious, logical choice in the world.
It looks like a miracle drug, honestly.
Yeah, like a miracle drug with zero side effects, why wouldn't you take it?
But Osman hints on a brilliant observation here. That mountain of 50,000 scientific experiments completely fails to persuade the average stressed-out person.
It just bounces right off them.
Totally bounces off. To the regular person, taking 20 or 30 minutes out of a chaotic Tuesday to just sit down, close their eyes, and do breathing exercises feels like an outrageous luxury.
It feels irresponsible, almost.
Yes. It feels like a hobby reserved exclusively for people who have nothing better to do with their time.
It is the burning house analogy all over again.
Exactly.
If the scientific data represents that dense textbook on the chemical properties of water, the stressed out person is the terrified homeowner.
They don't want the textbook.
No. They glance at the 50,000 experiments and think, I'm sure that's fantastic for the scientists in the laboratory, but I have to pay my mortgage by Friday. My boss is sending me passive-aggressive emails.
My kids need to be picked up from soccer practice in 10 minutes.
Right. Sitting still simply isn't an option.
I really want to push on the psychology of that resistance, though, because it's fascinating.
It's the core of the problem, really.
Yeah. If the science is that overwhelming and the physical benefits are that proven, why is the psychological barrier to simply sitting quietly so incredibly high? Like, why do we actively fight the one thing that the data guarantees will actually lower our blood pressure?
You really have to look at the core mechanics of the modern stress response to understand that resistance.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, when you face immediate, demanding stresses, the kind that require your full, undivided attention to navigate your brain shifts into a state of hyper-arousal.
Like a fight or flight kind of thing.
Exactly. Evolutionarily speaking, it's preparing you to fight a predator or run away. In that heightened state, your brain is constantly scanning its environment for actions that look like active problem solving.
So it wants you to be doing something physical.
Right. Anything that doesn't look like fighting or fleeing is immediately categorized as a dangerous waste of time. So your nervous system is literally sending you warning signals that sitting still on a cushion is a threat to your survival.
Wow. So your brain thinks relaxing will get you killed.
Pretty much. Simply because you aren't actively managing the immediate crisis.
That explains so much. Sitting down to breathe feels like you are dropping the ball. It feels, I don't know, it feels irresponsible. You sit there and you're just thinking about all the emails you aren't sending.
And Osman captures that skepticism flawlessly. He points out a really common scenario. A busy person might actually give in and try meditating once or twice.
We've all been there. We download the app, we try it for a day.
Yep. And maybe, after a 20-minute session, they admit they feel a bit calmer. But to the deeply stressed mind, feeling a bit calmer doesn't actually explain how the underlying problem gets solved.
Right. The overdue bills didn't disappear while their eyes were closed.
The project deadline didn't magically extend itself. To them, calmness feels like a temporary anesthetic, not a structural cure.
That makes so much sense. If I'm losing sleep over a massive presentation at work, taking time to, quote-unquote, feel calm doesn't actually build my slide deck.
Not at all.
In my mind, it just means I have 20 minutes less to work on the presentation. I'd imagine that's the exact trap most people fall into, which leads them to just quit after 2 days.
Oh, absolutely. And the busy person's skepticism would be completely justified if meditation were nothing more than taking a temporary mental vacation before returning to the exact same level of chaos.
Right. If nothing changes, what's the point?
It would be a profound waste of time.
But Osman doesn't leave us hanging with that skepticism, though. He doesn't offer that tired advice to, like, just trust the process and let go.
I hate that advice, honestly.
Same. It's so unhelpful. He actually tackles the objection head on by entirely reframing what meditation achieves inside the brain of a busy person. He takes that concept of the temporary anesthetic and he completely dismantles it.
He introduces this concept of the practice functioning as a core engine of efficiency. And this is where the strict utilitarian angle really comes into play.
Right.
According to his framework, the broad, practical benefit of meditation isn't about escaping your problems at all. The true value is that it incrementally and measurably improves your capacity to actually solve those day-to-day problems.
I need you to unpack the mechanics of that because I think it sounds counterintuitive to the stressed brain. How does the physical act of sitting still translate into becoming a better problem solver of the office?
Think of it as upgrading the underlying hardware of your mind.
Okay, I like that.
Osman argues that the practice fundamentally improves the efficiency of your thought processes and your decision-making capabilities.
So it's not just making you feel good, it's making you think better.
Precisely. When a massive stressor hits you, say, a sudden financial crisis or a major conflict at work, your default reaction is usually panic. And panic is erratic. It's incredibly inefficient.
You just kind of spin your wheels.
Exactly. Meditation trains the system so that instead of reacting with that erratic panic, you confront the stressor with strength and a relaxed demeanor.
But the critical nuance here, and I want to make sure the listener really gets this, is the objective behind being relaxed. You aren't relaxing to ignore the problem.
No, not at all.
You are entering a relaxed state with the explicit, hyper-focused intent of finding a solution. There's a really important distinction Osman makes here that I think completely changes the game for anyone listening who feels overwhelmed.
What's that?
He talks about where we allocate our mental energy. Normally, when a crisis hits, we spend almost all our cognitive bandwidth drowning in the adverse effects of the problem.
Oh, that is such a great phrase. Drowning in adverse effects.
Right. We obsess over the negative consequences. We fixate on how terrible the problem makes us feel.
And drowning in adverse effects is arguably the most inefficient use of the human brain possible.
It's like flailing in the water. Flailing is exhausting, but it doesn't move you any closer to the shore.
You're just burning energy to stay in the exact same dangerous spot.
Exactly. Osman points out that meditation forces a shift. It moves the mind's focus away from that helpless drowning sensation and redirects that exact same mental energy entirely toward generating solutions.
The mechanics of that mental shift are so fascinating to analyze because when you are drowning in those adverse effects, your working memory, your cognitive bandwidth, it's entirely hijacked by the emotional weight of the crisis.
You can't think straight.
You literally can't. You end up running these endless, catastrophic, hypothetical scenarios. Your brain is looping on, what if I get fired? What if I lose the house? What if everyone thinks I'm a failure?
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Running those high-definition simulations of failure takes a massive amount of neurological processing power. Meditation, in Osman's model, reclaims all that wasted processing power. It clears the emotional static off the screen.
And he also stresses that we aren't clearing the static just to find some generic, one-size-fits-all life advice. He specifically notes that general solutions are basically useless for complex problems.
General advice usually feels pretty hollow when you're in the middle of a specific crisis.
Yeah, telling someone to believe in themselves doesn't fix a broken supply chain.
Right. It's a reason why reading a generic self-help book does nothing when your small business is facing a highly specific issue. Your life situation is hyper-specific to you.
Completely.
The intricate interpersonal dynamics at your specific office, the exact nuances of your debt structure, the particular history you have with your spouse. I mean, nobody outside of you has the data to give you a blanket answer for those things.
So we aren't trying to download universal cosmic wisdom from the universe. We are clearing the mental workspace so we can access highly specific, heavily customized solutions required for our unique lives.
Exactly.
You, as the listener, are the only person holding all the variables to your life's equation. You just haven't had the processing power to solve the equation because the emotional panic is taking up all the RAM in your brain.
You are essentially optimizing your internal algorithms.
Oh, that's a good way to phrase it.
By removing the emotional variables that constantly crash the system, the fear, the hypothetical catastrophic loops, the drowning sensation, the logical solution-generating part of your brain can finally boot up, and it outputs a highly tailored, specific solution.
Let's ground this with an analogy for the listener. Osman is essentially arguing that meditation is not a retreat from the battlefield of your life.
No, definitely not.
It is a sharpening stone for the weapons you use on that battlefield. You aren't closing your eyes to pretend the stress isn't there. You are taking 20 minutes to upgrade the machinery you rely on to process that stress.
Yes.
If your current mental machinery is like, say, a 10-year-old smartphone that freezes every time you open more than 3 apps, meditation is the background software update that lets you run 50 complex apps simultaneously without the battery dying.
That analogy directly neutralizes the busy person's primary objection, honestly. The busy professional says, I don't have time to stop and sharpen the axe. I am way too busy trying to chop down this massive tree with a blunt blade.
Which makes no sense when you say it out loud.
Right. Osman's counterargument is purely mathematical. The 30 minutes you spend sharpening the blade pays for itself 10 times over, because the blunt blade takes you 5 hours to cut the wood, while a sharp blade takes you 45 minutes.
You actually gain time in the end.
You gain so much time.
But that proposition introduces a massive, highly practical question. If I'm listening to this right now, and I'm actually willing to buy into this idea of upgrading my mental machinery, my very next question is going to be about the timeline.
Of course. Everyone wants to know how long it takes.
How long do I have to wait to see this magical efficiency actually kick in? Because stressed people do not have the luxury of waiting a decade on a mountain to reach enlightenment. They need to know if this works before the next quarter ends.
And Osman provides a very clear answer to that, which is one of the most compelling aspects of his entire framework. He does not deal in vague timelines.
No, he doesn't. He gives a highly specific, very short timeline. He states that a practitioner will begin to find tangible, significant improvements in the overall efficiency of their life within just 6 to 8 weeks of practice.
6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, that is practically tomorrow in the grand scheme of things.
Establishing that concrete timeline is such a brilliant approach for engaging the modern learner. By framing the initial commitment as a 6 to 8 week window, Osman completely dismantles the intimidation factor that usually surrounds Eastern practices.
It makes it feel doable.
Right. The barrier to entry for a concept like lifelong spiritual dedication is far too high for someone who is just worried about paying rent. But pitching a 6 to 8 week trial period, that suddenly sounds like a measurable short-term experiment.
It perfectly bridges the gap between ancient methodologies and our modern hyperfixation on results. We live in a society built on quarterly earnings reports, 30-day challenges, fast shipping.
We want things now.
Yeah. Telling an executive to wait 5 years for mental clarity is a total non-starter. But telling them, hey, give me the time equivalent of a standard fitness boot camp, and you will see a measurable ROI, a return on introversion.
Return on introversion, I like that.
Right. That is a proposition they can actually map onto their existing worldview.
The obvious question then becomes, what is physically and psychologically happening during those 6 to 8 weeks to produce that ROI?
Yeah, what's actually changing in the brain?
Well, if we look closely at Osman's emphasis on incremental growth, the mechanism becomes a lot clearer. It isn't a sudden overnight transformation. You don't sit on a cushion on a Monday and wake up Tuesday immune to human suffering.
Believe me, I've tried. It's incredibly disappointing when the alarm goes off on Tuesday.
Oh, absolutely. It requires a real shift in perspective. Think of it more like compounding daily interest on a bank account.
Okay.
Day by day, session by session, you are making microscopic, barely perceptible adjustments to your nervous system. By the time you hit week 6, the compounding effect becomes visible. And what you generally notice first is the widening of a very specific gap.
Tell me more about this gap. I think this is crucial.
It's the microsecond between a stressful trigger occurring and your reaction to it.
Like the space between stimulus and response.
Exactly. Let's say before the 6 weeks of practice, an aggressive email lands in your inbox from a client. The panic response is instantaneous. The cortisol floods your system before you've even finished reading the subject line.
And you are immediately drowning in adverse effects.
Yeah.
Ready to just fire back an angry reply.
Yes. But around week 6 or 8 of consistent practice, that same email comes in and there's a noticeable pause, a literal gap in time before the physiological reaction hits.
Oh.
In that new, quiet, expanded space, your higher cognitive functions actually have the time to step in. You suddenly have the capacity to consciously choose a solution-oriented response rather than defaulting to an automatic panic reflex.
I have to play the skeptic for a moment, just to make sure we're really testing this idea for the listener.
Please do.
Is a 6 to 8 week period genuinely enough time to alter the trajectory of a person's life? Or is it just enough time to realize you are a slightly calmer version of the exact same stressed out person? Because Osman mentioned earlier that merely feeling a bit calmer isn't a sufficient result.
You've hit on the most crucial distinction in his methodology. Osman's text specifically emphasizes that the end result of this initial window is not merely a subjective feeling of calmness. He uses phrases like tangible improvement and significant improvement in life's actual efficiency. The calmness is not the destination. The calmness is just the vehicle you use to arrive at improved problem solving.
That is such a key difference.
Right. So you aren't just a slightly more chilled out person staring helplessly at a mountain of debt. You are a person who is actively, efficiently executing a newly developed, highly specific plan to eliminate that debt.
So the trajectory of your life doesn't change because you just feel nice. It changes because the actual decisions you make are fundamentally better.
Exactly, the output changes.
And those upgraded decisions don't just stay locked inside your brain either.
Right.
Once that problem-solving capacity is humming along efficiently, it starts to spill over into your external reality.
It affects everything.
Osman details exactly how this mental upgrade impacts the physical world. He outlines a ripple effect that touches the three most vital areas of daily life, describing them as spin-offs of this newfound internal efficiency and maturity.
The three massive pillars he identifies are finances, relationships, and health. And analyzing how he connects a quiet mental practice to these highly tangible external outcomes is where the sheer pragmatism of his approach really shines.
Let's dive into the first pillar, finances. He claims this practice improves your ability to earn an income, to increase that income, and to generally progress in your financial life.
Which is a bold claim.
Extremely bold. To a heavy skeptic, claiming that sitting quietly makes you wealthier sounds dangerously close to like a snake oil sales pitch. How do we logically connect those dots based on the cognitive mechanisms we just discussed?
The connection is actually incredibly logical if you track back to the core engine of efficiency. Consider the root causes of financial struggle for many people.
Okay, usually it's overspending or not earning enough.
Right, and very often, financial stagnation or a looming crisis is heavily exacerbated by incredibly poor decision-making driven by stress. When we are panicked about money, we make impulsive purchases just to artificially soothe our anxiety for 10 minutes.
Retail therapy.
Exactly. Or we actively avoid opening our banking apps or looking at bills because the sheer dread of seeing the numbers makes us feel like we're drowning. We fail to negotiate for a well-deserved raise because the stress of the confrontation feels too overwhelming for our exhausted nervous systems to handle.
Or we are just so profoundly depleted by the day-to-day panic of our jobs that we simply lack the cognitive bandwidth to even notice a strategic career move sitting right in front of us. We just have tunnel vision.
That's the perfect way to describe it. So if your decision-making efficiency undergoes an upgrade over those 6 to 8 weeks, your professional output and financial behaviors naturally shift.
Because the blinders come off.
Exactly. You stop avoiding the hard financial realities because you are no longer drowning in the emotional fear of them. You sit down, look at the numbers, and start generating specific mathematical solutions for your unique circumstances.
You actually swim with the problem instead of hiding from it.
You start navigating complex workplace politics with a relaxed, solution-oriented mindset, which inherently makes you a better leader and a far more valuable asset to your company. Better strategic decisions inevitably equal better earning potential.
So there is no magic or manifestation involved.
Not at all.
It's simply the removal of the massive cognitive friction that was artificially suppressing your earning potential in the first place. I love how grounded that is.
It takes the mysticism right out of it.
You aren't sitting on a cushion trying to manifest a duffel bag full of cash to magically drop on your doorstep. You are clearing the mental fog so you can actually see the ladder in front of you, and you're freeing up the energy required to climb it.
You are getting out of your own way, essentially.
Let's shift to the second pillar he talks about, relationships. Osman talks about finding real harmony in both your inner and outer circles. He even mentions it can help in improving romance or finding a partner if you're single.
Which, again, sounds like a lot for a meditation practice to deliver.
It does. How does a solitary practice of upgrading our mental machinery fix the complex dynamics of our love lives and our friendships?
Go back to the phrase Osman used earlier, drowning in adverse effects.
Oh.
When you spend your entire workday drowning in the stress of your deadlines, your boss, and your commute, what happens when you finally walk through your front door at night? Where does all that chaotic water usually spill over?
Oh, I mean, it usually spills right onto the people who happen to be standing closest to me. My spouse, my kids, my close friends. They catch the collateral damage.
We constantly take our unprocessed stress out on our inner and outer circles. When we are overwhelmed, we become highly reactive, deeply irritable, and just constantly defensive.
With a really short fuse.
A super short fuse. We are so consumed by the roaring noise of our own internal chaos that we have absolutely zero bandwidth left for empathy, patience, or genuine connection.
So we push people away without even meaning to.
Exactly. By shifting your baseline to a relaxed, solution-oriented state through meditation, relational harmony becomes a direct, unavoidable byproduct. You stop viewing your partner as just another frustrating problem to manage, and you regain the capacity to see them as a teammate.
And that widening of the gap between trigger and response comes into play here too, right?
Oh, massively. It means you stop snapping at your kids over minor inconveniences and start responding to them with measured patience.
It totally changes the vibe of the household. And if you are single, like Osman mentions, and you're actively looking for a partner, the exact same logic applies.
Of course it does.
Radiating a relaxed, mature, deeply secure, solution-oriented energy is infinitely more attractive to potential partners than radiating a chaotic, desperate, drowning energy.
The quality of the internal energy you bring to any interpersonal interaction heavily dictates the quality of the relationship that forms from it. If you bring chaos, you build chaotic relationships. If you bring clarity, you build solid ones.
Let's move to the third area he highlights, health. And this is where I think Osman earns a tremendous amount of credibility because he offers a deeply pragmatic, almost stark disclaimer.
I was so glad to see this in his material.
Me too. He states clearly that while your general health will definitely improve, there are certain medical conditions that are very serious and absolutely require conventional medical intervention.
Yes.
He stresses that a severe illness is not going to magically vanish just because you started doing yoga and meditating. However, he says the practice will drastically improve your body's capacity to deal with those illnesses and overcome them.
The responsibility of that framing really cannot be overstated. In the broader world of alternative healing or, wellness influencers, there is a very dangerous and prevalent tendency to claim that the mind is a magical cure-all.
Oh, you see it everywhere online.
You hear rhetoric suggesting that if you just meditate hard enough or think positive enough thoughts, you can cure a severe medical crisis entirely on your own.
Which is an incredibly terrifying and guilt-inducing concept to push onto someone who is genuinely severely sick. It basically implies that if they don't get better, it's their own fault for not being zen enough.
It's toxic, and Osman explicitly and categorically rejects that narrative. He grounds this ancient science firmly in modern physiological reality.
He doesn't tell people to abandon their doctors.
No, by explicitly stating that medical intervention is non-negotiable for serious conditions, he positions meditation not as a stubborn replacement for modern medicine, but as an incredibly powerful complementary enhancer to it.
It acts as the ultimate internal support system for your physical body. Think about it if your body is desperately trying to fight off a major illness, but your mind is simultaneously drowning in panic, anxiety, and stress about the illness.
Your immune system is suddenly fighting a brutal war on two fronts.
Exactly. That is the precise physiological reality. Chronic, unchecked mental stress floods the human body with cortisol and adrenaline. Over time, that constant state of fight or flight actively suppresses your immune function.
It creates systemic inflammation.
Yeah, and severely hinders the body's natural recovery processes. By utilizing meditation to actually manage the psychological stress, you are effectively pulling your body out of that destructive fight or flight loop.
You are handing your physiological resources back to your immune system where they belong.
That's beautifully said.
Yeah.
You are optimizing the body's internal environment so that whatever conventional medical intervention you are receiving, whether it's medication, surgery, or therapy, has the absolute best possible chance of actually working. You are maximizing your body's capacity to overcome the physical challenge.
If you're summarizing this entire ripple effect for the listener, Osman is not claiming that meditation acts as a vending machine.
Right. You don't put a coin in and get a perfect life.
It doesn't just give you a higher salary or magically grant you a flawless marriage or single-handedly cure your disease. He is stating that it constructs the optimal internal architecture.
The foundation.
Yes. It builds the strongest possible foundation for you to go out into the world and create that wealth, or foster that relationship, or fight that health battle with maximum possible efficiency.
It is the ultimate framework for personal empowerment. It strips away the magical thinking and puts the agency squarely back in your hands, giving you the actual tools to wield that agency effectively.
It's brilliant.
So we've laid out the immediate timeline, that crucial 6 to 8 weeks to see the initial ROI, and we've traced the tangible, real-world benefits spilling over into money, love, and physical health. But Osman doesn't end the timeline there.
He zooms out.
He zooms way out to paint a picture of the much longer-term horizon.
He brings us to the concept of continuous evolution. He concludes his message by noting that these benefits don't simply hit a plateau at week 8 and then just stagnate.
You don't just max out your stats.
Right. The improvements progressively and incrementally grow in value and depth as the months and years roll by. The practice continuously evolves the practitioner.
That structural contrast is really smart. You have the short-term hook to get you in the door, paired with the lifelong tail that keeps you going.
It is the perfect blueprint for sustainable habit adoption. You desperately need those short-term, tangible results in the first 2 months to prove to your highly skeptical, overworked brain that sitting still isn't a waste of precious time.
You need the proof.
You do. And once you actually see your bank account stabilizing because you stopped making stress purchases, or you notice your arguments with your spouse have dropped by half, you possess the undeniable positive reinforcement required to continue.
You've secured the proof of concept.
Yeah.
The data is now personal.
And that deeply personal proof of concept becomes the self-generating fuel that sustains the practice for years. It turns into a beautiful, self-sustaining feedback loop.
Because it feels good to succeed.
Yes. You meditate, which allows you to solve a complex problem efficiently, which makes your life noticeably better, which in turn motivates you to keep meditating.
It builds momentum.
Over the span of months and years, this incremental daily growth compounds into a profound evolution of your core character. You transition from someone who is merely trying to manage their daily stress to someone who is actively mastering their environment and designing their life.
Throughout this entire journey, Osman encourages people to explore these concepts further. He specifically mentions his website, yogawellness786.com, as a resource to see how these ancient sciences can adapt to the incredibly specific challenges of our current day.
And it's great because he actually offers tools to get started right away.
Yeah, he mentions there's a free 5-minute yoga and meditation program available for download right there on the site, so you can literally test this out today. And honestly, that synthesis is the key to everything we've unpacked today. Osman himself is the living embodiment of this synthesis.
He really is.
As an entrepreneur, a healer, and someone who navigates the world without eyesight again, drawing on his visual memories from before May 2023, he has taken something ancient, something that has been shrouded in mystery for thousands of years, and translated seamlessly into the stark vocabulary of modern efficiency.
He strips away the heavy intimidation, he removes the dogmatic barriers, and he presents the pure functional mechanics of the practice.
He makes it accessible, logical, and immediately useful for the exact person who, an hour ago, was absolutely convinced they simply didn't have the time to sit still.
It's a profound shift in perspective.
It really is.
Yeah.
So let's pull all these threads together for the listener. At the beginning of this deep dive, we asked why a busy, relentlessly stressed out person should even bother meditating.
And the answer is completely different than what most people expect.
Osman's framework has completely inverted the standard answer to that question. Meditation is not a luxurious hobby for people with an abundance of free time.
Definitely not.
It is not a mental escape hatch from your chaotic reality. It is a profound, pragmatic sharpening of the exact tools you require to manage your unique, complex circumstances.
It is the necessary software upgrade.
Yes, the upgrade that optimizes your financial decisions, creates the bandwidth for harmony in your relationships, and bolsters your physical health by removing the crushing weight of chronic stress.
It represents the fundamental shift from being a victim reacting to your life to becoming an architect efficiently designing it.
I want to leave you with a final, slightly different thought to mull over as you jump back into your busy day.
This is a good one.
We talked a lot about Osman's brilliant observation that we spend our time drowning in the adverse effects of our problems rather than actually solving them. But consider the identity we build around that drowning.
Oh, that's heavy.
In modern culture, we often wear our stress like a badge of honor. We equate the feeling of panic with the feeling of productivity.
If you're not stressed, you're not working hard enough.
Exactly. We subconsciously believe that if we aren't agonizing over a problem, we must not care enough about it.
We become addicted to the chaos because the chaos feels familiar, and letting go of that panic feels like losing a part of our professional identity.
So ask yourself this. If you took 6 to 8 weeks to upgrade your mental machinery, and you actually stopped drowning in your stress, who would you be without the panic?
That is the real question.
Right. If you weren't the stressed out, constantly overwhelmed person anymore, what would you actually do with all that reclaimed energy?
That might be the most intimidating question of all.
It is. But finding the answer is where your real life begins. We highly encourage you to check out Osman's insights. Perhaps try that free 5-minute program to start your timeline and explore this modern synthesis of ancient science at yogawellness786.com. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.